Coming to you live from the wastelands of the internet. It is I, the Nomad, bringing you the news. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, news of the day, news of the week. Well, basically news of the week. Welcome back, everybody. Hope that you're all having a good day. And we'll see how things actually go today. It'll be an interesting kind of a day today. There's a lot more news than people realize today. At least that I have. So it's gonna be a long broadcast. Well, I suspect it'll be a long broadcast. I'm gonna extend it here a little bit because I got to do something. I'll be right back. Hang on, everybody. Oh, goodness. I have got to shut some things out so that I don't bother the rest of the family while I'm giving my take on the news. But let's get started, shall we? Russia's provocations spark war talk in Warsaw, from Politico. And I don't see the guys. Let's see if we can find the author's name. Laura Cagliari. Is it just me, folks? Is it just me, or does there seem to be a dearth of male writers in political news? Am I missing something here? Anyway, just an observation. Drones are a blessing in disguise. At least people are realizing what's at stake, said a Western European lawmaker. Russia's recent airspace violations are hitting close to home, and European countries are waking up to the threat. After bitching to the U.S. to do more in the Ukraine day in and day out, pontificating how we're not helping Ukraine enough, they are quote-unquote waking up to the threat. Laura? Really, Laura? That's got to be one of the dumbest statements you've made. You see, when you come at this from a political point of view that's mired in anti-American rhetoric and protection of Marxist leftists, these are the statements you come up with, right, Laura? What do you mean, no man? What do you mean? What do you mean? You see, Laura here says, oh, they're waking up to the threat now. Where's her commentary castigating these people for not actually being serious in helping the Ukraine? Where is it she hasn't been yelling at the Europeans saying, hey, you guys need to do more? Where is it, Laura? Anyway, let's get back to this. There is a war. Today, the most important task for every public leader is to make our transatlantic and Western community understand deeply in mind and heart that this is an unwanted, in places strange new type of war. But it is a war, said Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk last week at the Warsaw Security Forum, a regional defense conference. In the corridors and on stages of the forum this week, ministers, lawmakers, and military officers recognized that Moscow is increasingly testing NATO and that Kremlin aggression is no longer limited to the Ukraine. Russia is trying to destabilize our societies, said Jan Wadapul, the German foreign minister, adding that the West needs to send a clear answer to Moscow. Welcome to the party, pal. You know, nothing against you fools, but now you're getting serious? Really? You're going to send your great Panzer's armies? Are you going to send them on into the Ukraine? Show us the mighty Wehrmacht! Show us the mighty Luftwaffe. Head on over to Poland and deploy your Panzers. Send the Leopard 2, the greatest tank ever created. Right? Send it on over there. Folks, I want you to think of this. Poland shares a border with Germany, a long one. Okay? A long one. But see, they have less than 500 main battle tanks in all of Germany against the thousands of main battle tanks that the Russians have. And don't get me wrong, the Russian tanks, they're, a Russian tank against an American tank or against a German tank is crap. But the American tank against the Panther was crap, unless you had 6 to every one of theirs, which we did. When you have more tanks by a significant number than the enemy does, you have a type of superiority that can't be beaten, all right, with 350 main battle tanks. And yet, here they are. Oh, we're getting serious about this. Hey, Laura, why aren't they doing anything about this? Why aren't you guys doing anything really about this? The Kremlin is denying any wrongdoing. Estonian Defense Minister Hanno Pevkur said in Warsaw that Tallinn had to unclassify some of the radar information to show that Russia is lying. We know that Russia is lying. Everybody knows Russia is lying. But while Russian incursions have been relatively regular in countries bordering Russia or the Ukraine since the war started, several suspected Russian drones also flew over Denmark this month, a country that is not usually considered a frontline nation. France, Germany, the UK, and Sweden are all sending counter-drone support to Denmark as Copenhagen prepares to host an informal meeting of EU leaders on Wednesday that will touch upon the bloc's defense readiness and sanctions against Russia. Really? Hey, Bobby B. Aircraft might beat tanks, but I think that the U.S. to out their Air Force, all right, before sending in the tanks. Oh, I'm thinking of Desert Storm. That's not what you're talking about. I'm not talking about Desert Storm. I'm talking about the EU, all right, which is why I mentioned the mighty Luftwaffe, all right, the German Air Force, and the great Eurofighter that they all, tout as to being so superior, the superior aircraft to America. Need coffee this morning. I definitely need coffee. But the real problem comes down to the Europeans are still not serious. They're still not serious about taking on Russia. And Russia knows it. Let me give an example of this. Okay? What do you see when you take a look at live map of the conflict? What do you see? You see attacks by drones against oil refineries. Okay? Now, I will tell you right now that these drone attacks against oil refineries are hurting Russia. They are actually having an effect in the war at the moment. Okay? But pretty soon, they're going to be gone. What do you mean? What do you mean, Nomad? What do you mean? What I mean by that is any weapons system will eventually cause the opponent to create a counter to it. Now, depending upon how serious these attacks have been, and some of them have been very serious, like I said, it has been impacting Russia. The the counter to these is being developed by the Russians right now. It'll be slow. Okay, the Russians are not known to pivot very quickly, but they do. They're not stupid. The Russians learn from these things, and over time, what they're going to learn is how to effectively deal with these issues to where they become, at best, or at worst, rather, a minor annoyance. And I think we're a lot closer to that than they realize. Now, are they going to deploy it on the battlefield? Different situation. In the battlefield, they have a different view of things. The Russians view equipment as more important than people. Always have. Human life is not a priority for them. And when it comes to drone strikes, the Russians are throwing drones just as effectively. In fact, they threw a drone up here. If you expand this up a little bit, you'll see that they've been hitting the city here of Shoska or Shostka. I'm not trying to butcher the name. I don't know how to pronounce it. Up here in the Sumy region. There's a few conflicts here. They say 8 assaults. Who knows what that actually means? But if you take a look at where they're actually fighting at, and I will be frank here, it looks to me as if along this line that the Russians are being forced to try and defend against the Ukrainians, and the Ukrainians are really fighting back, which is a good thing here. All right, in this region right here. All right, overall. How effective is that going to be? I don't know. But if you take a look at the region here, however, you also see there's a pocket here and a pocket here. These are pockets that are going to be that the Russians are fighting along these edges, all right, to try and seal. And if they get this pocket here, all right, their push here is going to be expanded. They're already starting to push out along this area here. All right, which means Zaporizhzhia is getting closer and closer to being under general assault. So the Russians are still, from their perspective, gaining ground. Everyone talks about the Russian casualties, the Russian casualties. Can the Russians sustain these casualties? Can the Russians sustain these casualties? And they make these comments as if the Ukrainians aren't sustaining any casualties. When have you heard about Ukrainian casualties in these battles? Now, I don't know. Maybe the Russians are losing 10-1. Maybe. That would be a good thing for the Ukrainians because they need to have about a 10-1 ratio if they want to win this war. But if it's not, if it's a tit for tat, 1-for-1 kind of a force, I don't know. I do not know. Anyway, on to the next story. In the other big war front, death toll in Gaza Strip exceeds 67,000, says health authorities. The Palestinian death toll from ongoing Israeli strikes in the Gaza Strip since 2023, so 2 years of war, all right, has surpassed 67,000. All right, Gaza health authorities said on Saturday. According to their statement, a total of 67,074 people have been killed and 169,430 wounded since the outbreak of a war. In a separate statement, authorities reported that 2 children had died in the past 24 hours from starvation and malnutrition, bringing the total number of deaths linked to food shortages to 459, including 154 children. Really? I'm surprised that Ukrainians have lasted this long. Free money and tech helps, helps, I guess. Yeah, free money, free logistics, free intelligence. Okay, um, I am at a massive disagreement. Okay, I have a massive disagreement with habitual line crosser who believes that only now are we actually giving actionable intelligence to the Ukrainians. All right, I do not believe that. Okay, at all. The idea that only now we're giving them actionable intelligence is ridiculous. Okay, it just is. All right, that's just that falls under the category of absolutely silly. Okay, it's absolutely silly just to make that kind of a statement. All right. Anyway, back to the storyline here. Despite Israeli statements suggesting a reduction in military operations following U.S. President Donald Trump's call for a halt to the bombing and Hamas's agreement to release all hostages, the Israeli Air Force carried out a series of intensive airstrikes in Gaza City on Saturday morning. Eyewitnesses said Israeli forces also opened fire on dozens of civilians attempting to travel to southern Gaza, or from southern Gaza to the northern part of the strip via the Netzarim corridor near Rashid Street. In a statement Saturday, the Israeli army warned residents against returning to areas north of Wadi Gaza, calling it still a dangerous combat zone, and urged civilians to use the Rashid Street to move south. A resident of the Shati neighborhood in Gaza described the night as one of the most violent in weeks, with explosions and shelling continuing until early morning hours. Weeks, huh? This is supposedly a genocide. Okay, I want you to remember that. There are literally millions of people. There's like 2 million people, 2 million people in the Gaza Strip, Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. Okay. So during a regular year with 2 million people, how many people die of just natural causes, all right, a year on average, do you think? And yet a total of 67,000 people have died in the past 2 years. This is a genocide? Do you people even know what the word means? I don't think so. First of all, the 67,000 deaths, while I'm not saying that there aren't civilian, quote unquote, civilian deaths, 67,000 is genocide. Really. I would venture to say you have no idea what war is if you tell me that statement. You make that statement, and I will tell you you have no idea what war is. Because you don't know what a genocide is, okay? You think war is this clean little business, even though you intellectually know it isn't. Even though you intellectually know that that's not the case. 2 children died of starvation, supposedly. Okay? What have I said before? When when the Palestinians realize that supporting Hamas, all right, is more deadly to them, and they decide to stop martyring their children. If they don't want children starving, then stop supporting Hamas. It's just that easy. You have to actively stop supporting Hamas. What do you mean actively? What do you mean actively, Nomad? I mean, you got to sit up there and go, there they are. You got to actively sit up there and start taking these Israelis and say, here they are, kill them all. That's the only way you're going to do this. Is you got to change the mentality of the populace. Right now, they would rather their children starve to death and scream Allahu Akbar than stop murdering children on the other side. They still support people who target children in their cribs to bash their heads. That's who they support. They actively support those people. Actively. To the point of allowing their children to starve to death. It's more important to them for them, all right, to allow their children to starve to death than to sit up there and stop supporting butchers who target others' children. Welcome to a real war. In Britain, police has started arresting pro-Palestinian protesters in London after organizers refused to cancel the demonstration after a synagogue terror attack earlier this week. Prime Minister had urged groups behind the demonstrations in Manchester and London, along with attendees, to respect the grief of British Jews instead of the grief of Britons, right? No, it's British Jews, all right? As he said, who wrote this stupid thing? Elizabeth Haag, senior news reporter, and Isaac Crowson. Anyway, the prime minister had urged groups behind the demonstrations, all right? He said the events could cause further pain to mourners. However, a protest in central London campaigning against the proscription of Palestinian action, an actual functioning terrorist group inside of London that have attacked the military, the British military, okay, went ahead, and after organizers from the group Defend Our Juries had a public spat with the Metropolitan Police and refused to call it off. The organization said, canceling peaceful protests, let terror win. Supporting terrorists ensures terror wins, right? That's what he should have said. Meanwhile, a march led by Greater Manchester Friends of Palestine, which has taken place regularly over the past 2 years, is also underway. It was referenced by members of the public who heckled the Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy when he spoke at a vigil near the attack on Friday. Allahu Akbar. Now the Germans stopped another attack on a synagogue, but police say Oktoberfest reopens after a security sweep due to a bomb threat. Oktoberfest fairgrounds were closed for several hours on Wednesday as police conducted a security sweep of the famed beer festival during a bomb threat by a suspect linked to an explosion across town in northern Munich. Police in Bavaria, the state where Munich is located, said the suspect was believed to be a 57-year-old German citizen who, according to preliminary findings, had died by suicide near a lake in northern Munich. The Oktoberfest grounds were reopened after police determined that the bomb threat linked to the suspect was not confirmed. All right, Munich police said on X or Twitter. The suspect, who had been living in a town of Starnberg, south of the city, had been carrying a backpack containing an explosive device. The Bavaria police statement said. The police said the blast before dawn in northern Munich at a residential building had been deliberately set on fire and appeared to be connected to a domestic dispute. Obviously, it was a dispute of some sort. As we go across the world, dun, 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 inspired by Thatcher, Japan's Prime Minister in waiting, Takashi Takachi, not trying to butcher your name, all right, smashes the glass ceiling. Sane Takachi came out on top in a male-dominated race to lead Japan's ruling party on Saturday, putting her on course to emulate her hero, former Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, and become her country's first female Prime Minister. The fiscal doves, the fiscal doves surprise victory may jolt investor confidence in one of the world's most indebted economies, while her nationalistic positions could stoke friction with powerful neighbor China. All right, analysts say. This is by John Giddy. Right. She also raised the possibility of redoing an investment deal with the U.S. that reduced President Donald Trump's punishing tariffs on Japanese goods. Having lost a runoff against Shigeru Ishida to lead the Liberal Democrat Party last year, Takaichi 64 will now seek approval from Parliament to replace him as Prime Minister. It is expected, as the LDP is the largest party in Parliament, but it is not assured, as the ruling coalition no longer has a majority in either house after losses in elections over the last year under Ishida. Hosting Trump in Japan later this month is expected to be one of Takashi's first acts as a leader. Rather than being happy, I feel like the tough work starts here. Takashi, I'm not trying to butcher your name, lady. All right, I'm just gonna call you Sane from now on. I realize it's a bit informal and that may bother you, but it's easier to say. All right, said in a speech to her fellow LDP lawmakers after her victory. A former economic security and interior minister, Sane has repeatedly referred to Thatcher as a source of inspiration, citing her strong character and convictions coupled with her womanly warmth. Womanly warmth. Yeah, I don't. I I don't think womanly warmth applies to Thatcher. Okay, now I'm a pro Thatcher guy. Okay, I thought Margaret Thatcher was a heck of a prime minister for Britain at a very difficult time. All right, but I'm looking at it first of all from an American perspective. Okay, Thatcher did a lot of things, both positive and negative, for Britain. One of the most positive things, though, she brought back the national identity of the British, which is now seriously under attack. That being said, she also did a lot of stupid taxation policies, thinking they were going to work. And that's not how the world works. Trying to realign some of the taxation needed to happen in Britain, that's true, but it hasn't really worked out too well. Calling her having a woman's warmth about her, not what I would necessarily put out personally. China seeks Japan's commitment on history. Taiwan after LDP and Sane's win. From Beijing, China. And this is from Kyoto News. China on Saturday expressed hope that Japan will honor its political commitments to major issues such as history and Taiwan after the formal Internal Affairs Minister Sane Takaichi, all right, known for her hawkish and nationalistic stance, won the ruling LDP presidential election. The Chinese Foreign Ministry said in a statement to Kyoto News that Beijing wants Tokyo to pursue a positive and rational policy toward China and promote a strategic and mutually beneficial relationship. Um, that is just word salad, folks. They are terrified right now of the Chinese are now upset. I shouldn't say terrified. They are now concerned. Okay, that Japan is willing to defend itself. against Chinese aggression. And that is going to be a point. They are going to be far more hawkish in support of Taiwan, something China is desperate to avoid. It's bad enough that America is supporting Taiwan. But logistically, America has issues, okay, in a long distance support for Taiwan if it comes to blows with China. China is obviously much, much closer and has far fewer logistical concerns, all right, if it decided to invade Taiwan, to conquer it. And I'm not saying that China is going to do that. Okay. China has a roadmap. They have a blueprint on how to take over Taiwan. Well, what do you mean, Nomad? What do you mean? They got a blueprint. They got a blueprint set in stone to take over Taiwan. It's a blueprint. All right? Well, what's the blueprint? What's the blueprint? The blueprint is Hong Kong. They just got to sit up there and get people to say, okay, let them in. That's all they got to do. They just keep putting in, agent provocateurs into Taiwan continuously, and they will, to try and force Taiwan, all right, their government, to create enough destabilization so that they will eventually say, okay, yeah, China, we're all Chinese, all right, and voluntarily join them. Now, they may get tired at some point of saying, okay, we're not going to wait any longer, and they may do it militarily when they think that they've got the power to do it, and they're trying to build that power. Don't make any mistakes here. But it's part of the ebb and flow of things. China doesn't look at this as a short-term kind of solution. Let's get to the shutdown, shall we? The Oval Office meeting didn't stop a shutdown, but the Trump 2028 hats and a sombrero set a tone. From the AP by Lisa Mascaro. Halfway through Donald Trump's inaugural White House meeting with congressional leadership days before a government shutdown, the red hats appeared on the president's desk. Trump 2028, they said, situated across from seated lawmakers, Vice President J.D. Vance, and several untouched Diet Cokes. House Democrat leader Hakeem Jeffries leaned over to Vance, himself a potential 2028 contender, and quipped, "Hey, bro, you got a problem with this?" The room chuckled in response. It was the random most thing in the world because we're sitting there, we're having a serious conversation, and all of a sudden these two red hats appeared, Jeffries recalled later in the Capitol. It was all so unserious, all right? You're not a serious person, Jeffries. Hakeem Jeffries is not a serious individual. He's a clown. He can't control his own caucus. His own caucus is out of control. All right. The Queen of Congress is slowly losing all of her power. It's slow, right? She still has a tremendous amount of it, but it's slow, but she's slowly losing it because she's slowly losing her grip on reality. She is suffering from mental health issues, in my opinion. You can see it. Okay. She's very old, but her power is waning. Her power to control her caucus has waned dramatically. And Hakeem Jeffries The fact that he is even the Democrat majority leader speaks volumes. He's a frickin' liberal loon. He is in the AOC wing of the party. And they've taken absolute control of the Democrat Party. The Zoran Mondani aspect. And they think that somehow they're going to, that this is serious. Right now, the sombrero meme, all right, is destroying the Democrats because they keep trying to push. Oh no, we're not trying to give illegals health care, but everybody knows that that's a lie. Everybody knows that you were giving illegals health care because of your previous laws that you had put in place. All right, you claim to say, well, they weren't undocumented; they were still illegal aliens, but because we documented them as illegal aliens, they therefore have status, and therefore they get to have health care. U.S. health care is applied for them. That was taken out, so now they want to put it back in, and the American people are looking at this, going, "What the hell are you trying to do here?" And they keep coming out with these false polls. The Republicans are getting blamed for the shutdown. Blame? You mean credit, right? The longer the shutdown goes on, I'm for keeping the doggone government, federal government, shut down. I'm all for it. Oh, it'll have disastrous effects. On what? The military is going to be fed. The military is going to get their pay. That hasn't been impacted. ICE is still functioning. It's a federal shutdown as ICE continues their raids. Thought it was a shutdown. See, the only thing that's shut down are non-essential things. And non-essential is just that, non-essential. Social Security checks are still going out. You see, a lot of what they're having a problem with here has nothing to do with actual, uh, you know, help for the American people, because the federal government hasn't been a help for the American people. And I think the longer this goes on, the more people are going to realize that what the federal government's been doing, has been hampering things more and more and is unnecessary. The longer it goes on, the worse it's going to be for the Democrats. You just need somebody in there who's willing to sit up there and say, you know what, we're tired of this bullshit. So Trump is going to start firing people, and it's going to start capping. And the Democrats can bitch, they can whine, they can do whatever they want. But Trump is just going to say, look, this is what they've given me. What other choice do I have? Boom, 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 boom. You people are permanently removed. And he's going to cut the agencies that he deems least important first, because he is the president. And it's up to Congress to pass the bills. Well, the Senate's going to have to make some hard choices. Democrat leadership is going to have to make some hard choices. And see, Chucky Schumer's doing this because he's worried about AOC and his reelection. Personally, Chucky Schumer is just an idiot. But it's going to get worse. I don't know who wrote this from The Guardian. Body slamming tear gas and pepper balls. Viral videos show ICE using extreme force in Chicago. Extreme force would be to hit them with lethal force. That's not extreme force. Kristi Noem, the Homeland Security Secretary, and Gregory Bovani, all right, a Border Patrol sector chief, were seen at an ICE facility in suburban Chicago on Friday, where law enforcement has been cracking down on protesters. In recent weeks, the Broadview facility has become the site of escalations by federal agents against protesters and journalists. Videos of agents deploying tear gas, pepper balls, and roughly throwing protesters to the ground have gone viral, and people are cheering it on. The Trump administration targeted Chicago with federal law enforcement starting August, claiming, or falsely claiming, they say, all right, that there has been a rise in crime in the city in recent years. There has been, all right. Since then, there have been increasingly aggressive reports of ICE enforcement in communities, including helicopters hovering over apartment raids. There have also been arrests of local officials and candidates for office who were illegally protesting, including Illinois' 9th Congressional District, Kat Abu-Ghazaleh, all right, who went viral with a video of an ICE agent slamming her to the ground after she attempted to prevent an ICE vehicle from leaving the facility. So she was illegally attempting to keep these people. These people need to be arrested and the book thrown at them. They need to go to jail for this. You want to make a statement by hampering and doing this, and tell her, and to bring her to court and put the court out there for everyone to see. Have them show the video, have the prosecution show the video, and then look at her and say, if you can tell me how she wasn't trying to impede the operation of ICE, which is illegal to this statute, you tell me what she was doing it for. That's what they do. Now, there was other big news that everyone was up in arms about, and that's this. Top Air Force General announces retirement. A top Air Force Commander, General Thomas Bussari, announced his retirement Tuesday for personal and family reasons. After much reflection and with a full heart, Barb and I have made a difficult decision to request retirement for the United States Air Force for personal and family reasons, said the head of the Air Force Global Strike Command, in a post on Facebook. While I'm stepping away from active duty, my commitment to service remains. I look forward to finding new ways to support our Air Force, our national defense, and the incredible people who make it all possible, wrote Bussari, who was nominated by the Trump administration to be the Air Force's Vice Chief of Staff over the summer. Bussari served as the Air Force Global Strike Commander since December of 2022. He was nominated by the administration to be the next Air Force Vice Chief of Staff in July, but Aviation Weekly reported in early September that Bussari's nomination was withdrawn. His retirement comes after Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth held an extraordinary gathering of top military officials in Quantico, Virginia, where he announced he was raising fitness standards, he was applying them, and overhauling the military's internal compliance and investigation process. If the words I'm speaking today are making your heart sink, then you should be doing the honorable thing and resign, he told the admirals and generals at a meeting, because he demanded that these people end the woke bullshit. I don't want to see fat generals walking around the Pentagon. Ding, 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 ding. I don't want to see a bunch of people walking around with huge beards on their face. Ding, 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 ding. Well, he's a religious minority and he wants a religious exemption. No. Next. Well, he's got a shaving profile. No. Next. These people who had exemptions, okay, especially the ones that have freaking shaving profiles. There's viral videos that are out there. I'm not going to show them of people that appear, and I say this because it's hard to tell from a camera angle, all right, from one of these personal cameras, just what the actual health status of a guy who has a full beard that he was able to sit up there and put braids in it. And he looked like he could not meet the height and weight standards on the PT tests. Now, maybe he could. I don't know. He might have just had a big chest, but to me, it looked like he was fat. Like I am now. Of course, I've been out of the military. I'm allowed to get fat. Do I need to lose weight? Yes, I do. I never had a problem passing the PT standards while I was in. Even when I was ordered back on active duty, I never had the standard. Had a problem with the standard. My first diagnostic PT test in basic training, I passed. I passed the standard. That's not because I, am exceptional or anything else. You had to learn to sit up there and do push-ups. But the first diagnostic PT test we took was after 2 weeks of the military, and I developed enough strength to pass the push-ups. After 10 weeks, I was well within the standards. They were giving us diagnostic PT tests in AIT every month. Every month. And if you pass your diagnostic PT test with a very high score, which was 90, 90, at least 90 in every category of the 3 categories, if you passed, which was with a score of over 270 and 90, 90, 90 in the 3 categories, you were exempted from certain PT formations because you were allowed to do things on your own, which everybody was automatically trying to strive for then because they didn't like to do PT in formation. Formation PT kind of sucks. Now, that was an excuse from all of them, but even half of them, if you're excused from half of them, all right, it was a boon. But Pete Hegseth laid the law down on these people. He said, we're going to have standards, period. And all of a sudden, everybody started to understand he was serious about this. And of course, they immediately go to the trans. Oh, you're kicking on all the trans people. These are good trans people. These are good soldiers. These are good. No, they're not. Then I go on freaking Twitter, X, and you see all this nonsense about warrior this and warrior that. And I was like, you assholes have no freaking clue. We don't want warriors in the military. You don't. Well, no, man. What are you talking about? You gotta have work. Wrong. You want soldiers. You need soldiers, not warriors. Warriors are individuals who act as individuals. Sure, they may be fighting individuals, all right, where they're out there, but they're individuals and they're acting as individuals. You need soldiers. Soldiers beat a group of frickin' warriors all the time. Ask the Romans. The Roman legions, even massively outnumbered, were able to defeat warriors in mass time and again. Why? Because there's a difference between being a soldier and a warrior, and when it comes to battle, soldiers are more dangerous. Not as individuals, but as a group. Massive fire breaks out at California oil refinery as residents feel explosion rock the area. Thought we got nuked. From Nicholas McIntyre. Massive fire erupted at a Chevron oil refinery outside of Los Angeles Thursday night, forcing residents to shelter in place following multiple reports of an explosion. Californians said they felt the blast from the Chevron refinery, the company's second biggest site in the U.S., the El Segundo, California, around 9:30 p.m. I thought we got nuked or something, said Mark Rogers. All right, saying his adult soccer league match in Redondo Beach was canceled moments later because of the heavy smoke coming from the blaze roughly 6 miles away. Videos taken when the explosion occurred show a massive fireball erupting amid a loud, extended roar. This was 300-foot flames, said Kevin Moore, who was in Manhattan Beach. All right, and he told the outlet, I didn't know if a plane crashed or if there was an earthquake or both. Officers and firefighters responding to the Chevron refinery in El Segundo after receiving multiple reports of an explosion, the El Segundo Police Department announced, according to KCAL News. The fire broke out at the facility's Isomax 7 unit that converts mid-distillate fuel oil into jet fuel for nearby LAX. The cause of the inferno was unknown, along with the fire's effects on the refinery's ability to produce jet fuel for the airport. Gee, I wonder what happened here. All right. It has been contained and there's no cause for alarm. All right. The 1,000-acre El Segundo facility operated by Chevron has its own fire department battling the blaze with the assistance of the El Segundo Fire Department, said KCAL News. We are able to respond to Chevron fire immediately. Our station is about a quarter of a mile away from the gates of Chevron, said the El Segundo mayor, Chris Pimentel. Pimentel. I'm not trying to butcher your name, sir. All right, told the outlet, obviously we are very concerned and there's a lot of investigative work to see what has happened. Yeah, I would agree that you have a lot of investigative work. Meanwhile, further up the coast, unprecedented water rationing began in Washington's Yakima Basin. Drought conditions east of the Cascade Crest are so dire that state officials plan to cut off water for farmers, ranchers, and more, something they have never done before. Reservoirs in the Yakima River Basin are expected to run out of water early this week, officials with the Washington Department of Ecology said in a release. To conserve what little water remains for fish and senior water rights holders in the 6,100 square mile basin, the state will halt surface water use, including water drawn from rivers, streams, and reservoirs, on Monday through the end of the month. The drastic measure comes on the tail end of Washington's third severe drought in a row, which has hit the south central portion of the state particularly hard. The Yakima River Basin serves as an important habitat for a wide variety of fish and wildlife, but it is also home to some of the state's most fertile cropland. And so the humans have got to go. Out they go, by Conrad Swanson from the Seattle Times. See, Seattle gets their water, but Yakima, sorry, you guys got to go. Farmers, ranchers, and other irrigators use surface water when they draw from rivers, streams, and reservoirs. Others might have rights to draw water from groundwater stored in aquifers, but across the American West, those groundwater supplies are also drying up. Every corner of the state is currently in a drought. Really? So Seattle's cutting back on water? These cuts are necessary to save some water for fish in the waterways and for senior rights holders who are last in line to face these sorts of orders. Uh-huh. Yeah, okay. This is save the snails order. Back to California. California police pull over a self-driving Waymo for an illegal U-turn, but they can't ticket it. Police in Northern California were understandably perplexed when they pulled over a Waymo taxi after it made an illegal U-turn, only to find that no driver behind the wheel and therefore no one to ticket. The San Bruno Police Department wrote in a now viral weekend social media post that the officers were conducting a DUI operation early Saturday morning when a self-driving Waymo made an illegal turn in front of them. The officers stopped the vehicle but declined to write a ticket as their own citation books don't have a box for robot. That's right. No driver, no hands, no clue, read the post. Officers contacted Waymo to report what they called a glitch, and in the post, they said they hope reprogramming will deter more illegal moves. Um, I seriously doubt it was an illegal U-turn. Okay, I think that these guys, I'm serious. I think that these guys were pulling stuff over. The Waymo programming saw a roadblock and made a U-turn. All right, and the police took that as we were conducting a sobriety thing, and look, this guy's trying to avoid the sobriety checklist, so we're going to pull him over and give him a breathalyzer test. And when there's no breathalyzers, now we got to make an excuse of why we pulled the guy over that was different, all right, than what they had before. They still had to come out and go, okay, well, why did you make the stop? Well, it was illegal. Well, why was it illegal? Well, we had a roadblock, and he tried to turn away from it. You see, there's no way to stop this. Right? The police are going to have to do their job, and they're going to chase more of these freaking stupid taxis around. Two teen girls, one just 13, found dead on a Brooklyn train in suspected subway surfing incident, said cops. A 13-year-old girl was one of two teens found dead on top of a Brooklyn train overnight in what investigators believe may have been a fatal subway surfing incident, police sources said Saturday. The cops were called at 3:10 a.m. to the Marcy Avenue Broadway subway station in Williamsburg, where they found the girls unconscious and unresponsive on the Brooklyn-bound J train, sources said. The victims were pronounced dead at the scene. The second victim was believed to be between 13 and 18 years old. Officers are speaking to three teen boys inside the station, then driving two of the boys away in a cruiser at 3 a.m. in the morning. At 3 a.m. Do you know where your children are at 3 a.m.? A 13-year-old girl? Young girls are out there at 3 a.m.? 3 a.m. Nothing good happens after midnight, folks. Babies could be born without biological mothers. U.S. researchers raises the possibility of IVF embryos with two genetic fathers and no DNA from a woman. Babies could be born without a biological mother after scientists created functional human eggs from skin. American researchers demonstrated that it was possible to replace the DNA from an egg with genetic material from another person's skin and turned it into a sex cell ready for fertilization. When the team fertilized the egg with sperm, it began growing into an embryo until the experiment was halted at 6 days, the point at which an embryo could be transferred to a womb in IVF. Great. I wonder what that's going to mean going forward. Who knows? Well, folks, unfortunately, there's some stuff going on here. I've only got one last story that I'm going to be able to tell, so I'm going to have to get to it. Miniature Scottish Highland Bull on the loose in Connecticut. The Scots have invaded. A 3-foot-tall miniature Scottish Highland Bull escaped from a Connecticut farm and has been repeatedly spotted several miles away from home. Kit Sullivan, owner of Sullivan Brothers Farms in Franklin, said the bull, Lefty, had only just arrived at the farm when he was spooked by another bull and managed to squeeze out underneath a barbed wire fence that has been designed for larger bovines. Nearby residents have shared photos and videos of the wayward bull on social media, And he's been spotted as far away as downtown Norwich, about 7 miles from the Sullivan farm. He's very hard to find, just because weeds are taller than him and he's orange colored, so he blends right in the leaves with all the leaves down on the ground. He's friendly, but he's skittish around people that he doesn't really know. I've heard of miniature pigs, but a miniature bull? It's kind of cool looking. Gotta admit that. Gotta admit that. He probably just looking for a pub, looking for some beer. All right, everybody. That's going to be all the show for the day. I hope that you all have a good day. Thanks for coming out, and I will talk at you all later. Bye bye, everybody.